Municipal Solid Waste Permitting Division. Next to him is David Dipple. He's a geologist with the permitting. Then we have Steve Shepard. He's an attorney with the agency. And on the end is Garrett Arthur. He's also an attorney with the agency, but he's with the Office of Public Interest Counsel. His role is a little bit unique and different, and he'll explain that when we get to the short presentations. Also with the TCEQ, we have Earl Lott. He's the Waste Permit Division Director. He's going to wave over there. Christine Bergeron, Section Manager, MSW Permits. Matthew Vandenawa, the Team Leader for Municipal Solid Waste Permits. Ashley Forbes, she's the Special Assistant to the Office of Waste. From our regional staff, we have Joel Anderson. He's the Regional Director out of San Antonio, and with him is Cameron Lopez. Lisa Wheeler is also here. She's with our media relations. And then helping me tonight to coordinate the meeting, we've got Jim Fernandez behind me, Kathy Byer, Irma Salazar, and Dion Avalos are outside signing in. For the applicant, these three gentlemen to my right, we have Wade Wheatley. He's an engineer with Cook Joyce. Brian Dudley is also an engineer. And on the end is Ed Hughes. He's a geologist. I'd also like to recognize that we have State Representative Kimball with us tonight. And we have Kelly Follis with Senator Campbell's office. Also, the Seguin Mayor Don Keel is here. I think he's actually outside being interviewed by TV. I'd also like to announce with us tonight, we have a PhD student from the School of Communications at Texas A&M University. Her name is Eleni Gesh Karamanlidis. And she's here, she's up against the wall. She's here as a part of our research project, and she's observing the meeting as a part of her PhD program. A lot of you were here at our last meeting. The format of the meeting will be what it was before. We're going to have some short presentations, explain about the application, what the TCEQ does, then we're going to open it up for question and answer. And as before, you will come to the mic, ask your question either of the applicant or the TCEQ. We also have, I'd like to announce, we also have Sarah Brownstein is here. She's with Senator Zaffarini's office. She just arrived. So we're going to have question and answer. We'll take a break, and then we'll get into the formal comment. And that is when you signed in out front, there was a box to indicate whether or not you wanted to give a formal oral comment. And I'll call your names, hopefully in the order that you signed in. You'll state your name for the record. Give us your formal comment. We'll go through this process again and explain it to you. If you have any questions about it, we'll continue to explain to you. But so for now, let's just do our short little presentations. For the applicant, we're going to have Wade Wheatley explain a little bit more in more detail about this application.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Wade Wheatley. I'm Vice President of Cook Joyce Incorporated. We're an engineering services firm out of Austin, Texas. We became involved in this application around January of 2013. We were engaged to produce a Parts 1 and 2, or complete a Parts 1 and 2 application that was pending before the commission. We replaced, or started working with and replaced the previous engineers and geologists working on this application. It was initially submitted as a land use application, basically a Parts 1 and 2 of a 4-part application. Just Parts 1 and 2 were submitted and being reviewed. We were busy working on Parts 3 and 4 and completed those before the land use process completed, so we went ahead and submitted those around November of 2013 and requested a consolidated application and consolidated review. We felt that was a more efficient use of ours and the state's time. And that's where we're at in the application now. We received the first notice of deficiency, and we're in the process of answering those questions for the TCEQ.
Thank you, Wade. Steve O'Neill, as I said before, many of you have probably spoken to him directly. He's the engineer responsible for reviewing the application for TCEQ, and he'll explain to you what it is he looks at on these applications.
Thank you. When we receive an application, it goes through a brief administrative review. We look for the main parts, or the administrative team looks for the main parts of the application, and then it's declared administratively complete and forwarded to the technical team. David and I are the technical team on this application along with our management. We use checklists, shell documents, and guidance documents in the review of the applications, and to prepare a draft permit should we reach that point. The purpose of the technical review is to ensure that every application meets all of the requirements of Chapter 330 that are applicable to that facility. Now, an application is broken up into 4 parts. There is, part 1 is the administrative section, part 2 is the land use information, including some siting restrictions, siting limitations, and general statements on geology, hydrogeology, floodplains. Part 3 is the design information, and part 4 is the site operating plan, which describes how the facility is operated. Now, we were here almost 2 years ago, and we were discussing a bifurcated application. That application, as Mr. Wheatley said, has now been debifurcated, consolidated. We're still creating vocabulary to describe this process. So during the review process, the technical staff reviews it. There is public participation, which Mr. Shepard will be describing in further detail. We issue notices of deficiency, and at some point, once all rules have been met, a declaration of technical completion is issued. Now, we received this application originally December 28, 2011. Parts 1 and 2 were administratively complete January 6, 2012. As I said, almost 2 years ago, April 24th, 2012, we had the first public meeting. Parts 1 and 2 were technically complete on April 4th, 2013. The applicant then came in with parts 3 and 4 on October 14th, 2013. Those parts were determined administratively complete on October 23rd, and another notice was issued at that time. They then came in on November 13th with a combined document that was essentially as a 4-part document rather than where we had before a part 1 and 2 and then a part 3 and 4. It was formatted as a complete document. There were some minor changes made to part 2 at that time. So if we made our NOD letter available upon its issuance, and there you will see some new deficiency items on part 2 primarily. That's because there were some minor changes, and we've asked some additional questions since it was technically complete. That NOD was mailed on February 26th, and we are awaiting the response to that notice of deficiency letter. We'll be here through the Q&A to answer any questions you may have. And now Steve Shepard with our Environmental Law Division will give a brief overview of the public participation process.
Good evening. My name is Steve Shepard. I'm an attorney with TCEQ. What you see here is the staff of the executive director, which is part of the agency. Our agency is basically made up of 3 commissioners appointed by the governor, and then the executive director's office. The executive director's office goes through and does the review of these applications. Then we lead into this public participation process, which can ultimately lead in a hearing before an administrative law judge and before the commissioners. And so I'm able here to assist staff in doing that. The part of the process where we are right now is in technical review, where we just sent out the notice of deficiencies. We'll get a response to that in the next month or 2, which may resolve those deficiencies, or there may be another round of a notice of deficiencies. Once we finish that, we get to a point, if our staff believes that it complies with the rules, we would put out a notice that would start the official comment period, which would be a 30-day period. Depending on comments that we get during that period of hearing request, we will provide a written response to comments and the opportunity to go to a hearing if necessary at that point. And so that's just to give a big picture of where we are in the process. And I will also be available for any questions.
Thank you, Steve. And now we have Garrett Arthur, who is an attorney with the Office of Public Interest Counsel, and will explain the role of his office.
Good evening, y'all. As Tara said, I'm also an attorney at the TCEQ, but I have a different role from Mr. Shepard. I do not work for the executive director side of the agency. I work under the 3 commissioners. My office's job is to represent the public interest. I can't represent individual members of the public, but I can be a resource to any member of the public to help understand the public participation process, the hearing process, and if this goes to hearing, I to that hearing, and I will be making my own independent analysis of the application and the permit, and ultimately making a recommendation for my office to our commissioners as to whether the application should be granted or denied.
Thank you. Before we open it for Q&A, it sounds like up here that the sound is bouncing a little bit. Is everybody okay with the sound in the back row? How are you doing? We're okay? We're good. Great. So now it's time to ask the question either of the applicant or the TCQ. And so that everyone can hear, and because we are recording this, if you have a question, if you'll just step up to this microphone, we'll hopefully be able to answer them. See, I know somebody has a question. Hop up.
Steve Odell said something about a shell document. What is that, please?
Pass the microphone down.
There are templates available to us that are used that contain stock language. We insert the specifics from the application into those documents.
So it's just a template.
Templates, checklists. We have I think it's a 72-page checklist that lists each rule. We determine the applicability and whether the applicant has met it.
Just makes your job easier.
Does anyone else have a question? Yes, sir.
I guess this is for TCEQ. How many notices of deficiencies do they get? We have read the first page, the very first one, that they would get 2 chances, and if they couldn't answer all the questions, then they wouldn't get another chance.
I would say 4 letters have been published, or 3 letters have been published, including the last one. There have been other forms of communication to express deficiencies. But the 2 that you refer to is a goal in any application, but it's not the number of deficiencies. The number of letters is not limited by statute or by rule.
So they can go as long as it takes to they finally get all the questions answered, if it takes 7 years, 8 years.
That would not be my decision to stop, but conceivably, yes.
Thank you.
My question is for the TCEQ. In the past 10 years, how many municipal solid waste landfill permits have you denied, and if so, on what grounds?
We don't have a definite answer for you, but I do know that we have denied several landfill applications in the last 10 years. I hate to guess at what the grounds were, even though I've seen those documents over those 10 years. I can certainly try to provide you with that information. If you wanted to call me, I could provide you with some of those.
Well, perhaps the whole group would like to hear that answer eventually. Thank you.
I think that Steve can't tell you off the top of his head. He'd have to go back to the office and research it. And then it's not that he's not going to tell you now. He doesn't have that information with him.
And we would certainly, once we had that statistic, we could get it to Mr. Watts, and he could publish it, make it available to all of you.
Yes, sir.